So, good evening and welcome to 40 Days Bible Study number 205. This is the 79th in the Matthew series. We're on Matthew chapter 6, as we're looking at the entire section of Jesus talking about worry and telling us not to worry. This little section, as I've said before, is Jesus emphasizing don't worry because he knows how stubborn and stupid we could be too. People don't like to hear that. People only like to hear we're good and God is going to bless us. But the fact is, you, me, we are stubborn and extremely stupid when it comes down to serious things. And that's the proof that we are, and God knows and caters for that, is this whole section. The number of times Jesus goes into effort and detail to say, don't worry about stuff. Okay, last week we looked mostly at verse 25. Mostly, we're doing the whole section, but I spent a lot of time discussing verse 25's issues. We're going to continue the study by looking now at a couple of comparisons that Jesus drew for the disciples and he drew for the Jews in the audience. And I would like to do it briefly, but I don't like to rob us. So the quality has to be maintained. Okay, if we look at verse 26 here, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet our heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? I did verse 27 as well. We'll try to get through both of these. Verse 27 is awkward because it could be translated as, which of you, by being anxious, can add a single cubit to his stature, instead of add a single hour to his span of life. That is a real thing. Okay? Sorry. Now, this verse 26 talks about birds being taken care of as a comparison. Matthew Poole and John Gill take care to highlight Jesus was talking about wild birds, not the ones that we are responsible for, the ones you keep in cages or chickens that you keep at home or ducks or whatever, right? Again, the scholars, like God, in his own word, they take precautions because they know that men are stupid and difficult. And people will try to find fault and say, oh, I take care of my chickens. God not feeding my chickens. Now, older translations, if you read them, will say fowls. I wonder if we can get an older translation here. This is 627. Let's go to 625. Check out the multiple translation of the same verse. Not 25. 26, sorry. Right. So you can see NIV has birds, NLT birds, English birds, right? And we come to King James, fowls of the air. So the King James crowd would read, behold the fowls of the air, right? It says fowls because in their times, they referred to all birds as fowls. As times changed, the use of the word fowls was restricted, or became restricted. Now, if we talk about fowls, we usually talk about chickens. We don't really talk about other types of birds. We might talk about other domesticated for eating birds like fowls. But generally, somebody says we have fowl, they mean we have chickens. They don't mean we have a variety of different kinds of birds. Okay? Now, this is a good example for us, though. If you read that King James Bible and you read, behold the fowls of the air, it can't mean chickens. Nobody has chickens in the air. So most of us would read and understand, oh, they mean birds. Most people. It's a very easy difference between the King James and how we speak. A very easy difference for us to spot. Most people would spot it, okay? And that is good. However, I want to use this as a teaching point. It gives us an easy example to learn from. You see, you and I, we could recognize here something that somebody else might not figure out as quickly. Most people will see fowls of the air and see birds. But there might be somebody out there who's like, behold the fowls, and they'll think, look at my chickens. Jesus is telling me, look at my chickens. So just as that person may not pick up on the true meaning of the translation that he's reading, the King James Version means birds of the air, birds general, but we see fowls, we might see it with our eyes and think a fowl is a chicken. Some people might do that and think they're referring to chickens. Seeing that for ourselves now, that it's possible for somebody to misunderstand what it's really saying, it opens our eyes to the fact that there are things that we might read and not see and understand properly. That's why we need to study. So, because the same thing could happen to ourselves in other situations, we need to be aware and not just read a translation and say, okay, that's it. I read the Bible. I'm good to go. I am set for life. Give me my $10 million, God. I'm ready to handle it. No. Take your time, study the word, and know that while you're studying the word, you can make mistakes. We'll see some instances here where good study reveals a lot and it erases questions. Okay? Albert Barnes calls this here the second argument for confidence in God's providence. And he listed and he spoke about the glee that birds show when they feed and they sing. So birds will eat and you'll hear them twittering and making a lot of noise and singing, and they parade with their I would say their hands, their wings in the air, and they whatever they do, right? And Barnes said that few birds ever actually die of hunger. Jesus gave this example to show that these things thrive. Even though they don't work to plant anything that they eat, they don't work to invest in anything that they feed off of. And that's true. No bird invests in his future feedings by planting a seed on purpose. If they do plant seeds, because they do, it's by chance. I'd mention here that birds don't plan too long in advance because some of them do like build nests in anticipation of eggs and stuff. But while they don't plan too long in advance, we do see birds working to eat. Working here, what I mean is it takes great effort to fly, land on a branch, and eat. You might say that doesn't take too much effort, but to fly uses a lot of energy. Even when human beings fly with machines, the machines that fly use far more energy per ground distance traveled unit of ground distance traveled. They use far more energy than any other form of transport. Birds use a lot of energy to fly. So they do work for their food in that sense. They have to go and gather. They don't sit there and wait for food to come to them. Birds have to go to food. All right. The fact that we have more developed brains, hopefully, we should plan in our lives, but take note here very seriously, planning that we do must be 100% analysis focused planning and 0% worry. Okay? 0% worry. The Greek root for look is emblepo. Emblepo. Let me show you emblepo. This is not it. 625. Do not be anxious. And I can't find it on the screen. Here we go. All right. This Greek word, emblepo, is 1689 in the Strong's numbers. Can't find 1689. Can you all find it? Because I'm on the wrong verse. There we go. Sorry, y'all. I'm seeing the screen, but Zoom blocks parts of it. So, I can't see parts of it. Right. This here. Emblepo. This is not the Greek for worry. This is the Greek for behold, gaze, look upon. Worry comes after. I apologize. Emblepo here means behold, gaze, look upon, see, looking, and see, and so on. Okay, you can read the Greek, you can learn to read the Greek, Emblepo, emblepo, or emblepo, this could be emblepo, but it's emblepo, pronounced emblepo. In this verse, emblepo specifically means to look at with the mind or to consider. There's a reason I'm coming here for you. Let me show you how to find that. If you're looking, Matthew 6, find it right. Matthew 6:26. This is the verse we're in. All right. Showing you here proof. Look at the birds of the air and so on, right? Look at the birds of the air, verse 26. In this verse, Matthew 6:26, figuratively, to look at with the mind and to consider. I'm using this as an example to show you that when you seek the meaning of a word in the original language, pay attention. Don't just take what they give you up here at the top. This is the generalized. It usually means these things. Observe and try to find the specific verse that you are looking for in the listings of the meaning. Some of these words, you won't see one. You'd see one, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then two, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, it would be a lot. But Matthew 6:26, this word look means figuratively look, to look with the mind or to consider. There's a point I'm getting to as well, other than the learning to study the Bible point. The other point I'm getting at is, it is possible that some clown would try to sound knowledgeable when preaching this and say, Jesus was talking to the crowd, and Jesus instructed the crowd to look up from where they were and see the birds all around. So imagine some pretender, look at the birds of the air, colon. And this clown would go in front of a whole church of people, goats and sheep, of course, because there are lots of goats in the church. And he would say, look at the birds of the air. And this guy would be like, folks, look. Jesus said, look up, look at the birds of the air, because there's a colon here. And that means take a pause, look up, see them. They're not sowing or reaping. That's wrong. I just showed you that in the original languages, when we study the word emblepo, in this verse specifically, it means look figuratively with your mind. A lot of them would use this to look knowledgeable and impress people and try to create a scene so that they'll get people emotively involved. They create an emotional push, emotional charge to hook, because they're hookers, to hook goats and keep them in church. Folks, the church is supposed to be a place where the sheep of God go to feed. If goats come in, that's their business. But we ain't catering to goats, we cater to the sheep. Be careful the kinds of churches you attend and the kinds of messages you listen to. One of the other tricks I thought of is they would use this as an excuse to say, well, Jesus told the people to look up at the birds, so it's okay. He was doing his version of turn to your neighbor and tell them. You know that nonsense preachers do to keep people awake during the boring sermons? Turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor, Jesus loves you. Go turn to your neighbor and say, you are a sinner. That kind of stuff is gimmickry that is done in churches where pastors know they're not teaching the sheep of God and they start catering to the goats. Dear friends, that's wrong. A point I bring here is, in God's eyes, there is hierarchy. There's a rhetorical question posed here in this verse. Are you not of more value than they? That rhetorical question is posed to assert our importance above birds and make it very clear, because we are more important than birds. God made things, and there's an order of importance. That's why, Christ is the head of the household. Christ is the head of the church. The man is the head of the organization, and women below in terms of a church organization, which is why ladies can't preach to mixed crowds. That's why in the household, Christ, man, woman. children. It does not mean the men boss around women. Please don't walk around thinking that. It's his duty to cover her, protect her, take care of her as if it's his own body. But anyways, in terms of this here, we see hierarchy, people above the birds. Clearly, God has structure in his order. There's no weak pandering. All things are equal mentality in the natural operations of the world that God has created. In fact, Jameson Fawcett Brown referred to animals as brute creation. I love the term, brute creation, to indicate their mindless operations. Sadly, though, I see today too many brute creation like humans, the way they live, regardless of education and wealth status. This is not a knock on anybody who has more education or less, more money or less money. Brute creation applies to a lot of people, the way we operate. The devil's deception has created this because our minds are easily manipulated. As long as we focus on flesh and we don't focus on the one who made everything, we're easy targets. People are controlled by our various appetites instead of controlling the appetites. It's wrong side. Instead of us controlling our appetites have taken over and controlled us. God made us and God told us to have dominion over the earth. That means God was saying, manage the earth, utilize it for his honor, his glory. We are in essence God's chief managers of the resources of the world. While he made us with desires and needs, he did not make those desires and needs in us to control us. We have to manage them just like we have to manage the resources of the earth. We have to manage our needs and wants and submit those things in discipline for his honor, his glory. We do have to enjoy them. Of course, we have those things, we have to enjoy them, but we enjoy them in the prescribed ways that he has authorized so that we can have long, fulfilling lives. Look at the negative consequences that erupt when people break God's laws because their fleshly desires take over. Obesity, sickness, disease, broken homes, battles, corruption, destruction. Now, there's a word here that the ESV did not translate, and I want to show that to you. Check this out. All right, this word here, malon. This word, malon. This word is not translated in the ESV. You'll see, not you much more valuable, sorry, not you much are more valuable than they. In the ESV, you'll see, where is it? Are you not of more value than they? Malon is much. We see the more value, but we don't see the much. This should have been translated, if you were sticking closer to the original literal translation. Are you not of much more value than they? That matters. I'm not saying the ESV is wrong. It's understood the much is there. But we might miss it if we don't do proper Bible study. Easy? Malon means much. And NIV and NLT, they have it. They have much more valuable and far more valuable in those translations. The word here, much, is not redundant. Some people would say it was left out because, well, it's more valuable is all we need. We don't need to say much more valuable. But Bengal says, because we're going from less valuable to more valuable in a comparative sense, the birds comparing to us, we need the comparative adjective here. We aren't more valuable than a bird. We are far more valuable than a bird, or we are much more valuable than a bird. So inserting that malon there, Jesus didn't mess around. He wasn't saying, okay, well, the birds are here, you guys are here. He said, you are much more valuable than the birds. Simple things like this we may not miss if we read certain translations alone. Expositors brings forward two possible opposing views to Jesus' speech here. When Jesus says, "Oh, the birds and you, the birds don't harvest, they don't plant, they don't sow, they don't water, they just harvest." A cynical view comes up, where the cynical view would say, "Well, they don't take care of themselves and invest, but many birds die in the winter because they don't work to save food for that time." I did research. About 30% of birds may die in the winter time in some countries. About. But it's not because of um, a lack of food necessarily. It might be that they're in a bad spot. They can't get food. If they were in other places, they'd get one, two. Many birds store up fat reserves to get by in the winter on hard times. And three, many birds are easier targets for predators because food is so scarce. When they stop to rest anywhere, they can get caught, or when they find food and they go to it, predators are waiting to get them. But cynics would say, well, birds don't invest and take care of themselves by planning and worrying, so they die. The other opposing view would be farmers. Farmers would be like, I plant, I sow, I plant, I water, I take care of the weeds to get rid of them to don't choke up my plants, and the birds harvest my stuff. The birds are stealing and eating at my expense and spoiling my crop yields. But Jesus, he answered these views before they can be brought up, because Jesus posed a preemptive question regarding our greater importance. Birds don't matter that much for their lives to be of any great loss. Birds are part of God's system of things, and God's system has ebbs and flows. It's a cyclical nature. And God has ordained this order of things, that birds will live, birds will die. They will live, they'll be fed even though they didn't plant, and then they'll die. We have our own cycle, which involves planting, seed time and harvest, seed time and harvest. And when Jesus put that preemptive question that we can all see on screen here, are you not of more value than they? Don't bring your cynical view saying, well, the birds die too. That's part of the system. Don't come and say, well, they take our stuff. Are you not of more value than they? You'll be taken care of. Do not be anxious. It's literally saying, don't worry. Jesus answered the cynic and he answered the farmer before they even asked their question in this simple little set of verses. That said, this is why we humans have a great responsibility to manage the resources of the earth. I'm not saying jump on the electric car bandwagon or all the wind and solar powered things. I'm not saying that at all. I wouldn't say that. I am saying we need to structure our population support systems in such a way that we don't destroy the delicate balance of the ecosystems and food webs that God has created. Don't remove all the animals. Don't remove all the trees. The birds eat without investing because God made a system to feed them. We were cursed with the Genesis 3:19 statement by God himself. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Thorns and thistles you shall bring forth, you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. Basically saying, I had everything laid out for you, you could get it, but no, now you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. You have to work hard to get what I created for you now. We have to put things in place. We have to work to extract what we need from the earth. Imagine how great God's provision would have been had sin not entered this world. We'd literally, I figure, I'm just guessing, it might be like, I want to open an oil refinery. Boom. There's an oil well or space for an oil well. I just have to build the oil well. Let me just get oil. I just want it, so I'll get it. Use the equipment, build the machinery, set up the refinery, and it'll be there. But no, by the sweat of your brow you shall eat. I add here that this was God showing us his foresight because he was telling Adam and Eve at that time, you're going to have to work. You see, as individuals, in small groups or individuals, you and I could survive by foraging from what's growing naturally. You go by a berry bush, you eat. You go find a chicken, you kill it and eat it. You set a trap and catch a bird or whatever. We can live off the land. I probably really can't on my own, but we should be able to as human beings, I would call it caveman style living, but some people like doing that stuff. We can live by that. We can survive. But you see, God knew our population would erupt. That population explosion that has occurred many times in history to get to this point where we have 8 billion plus people. He knew that we'd need systems of water transport, power delivery, goods transport, people transport, food logistics. But he said it. Don't worry. He said it. By the sweat of your brow, you'll have to eat. You'll have to work for it, but don't worry about it. And that Genesis, that was a prophecy given back then. By the sweat of your brow shall eat. That's a prophecy given back then to show us God knew modern society would become complex. And now look at us. Human beings are absorbed by work. People cater everything they have to do around their work schedules. Now, because of the different translations here, so I can bring that up. In the next verse, Romans 6:27, some of the more modern ones will say, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Single hour to your life, single moment to your life, single hour to a span of life. But there are some that would say, 1 cubit to his stature, add 1 cubit to his stature. So if you go through the different translations, you'll see cubit to span life. This one is cubit to lifespan. It's a mix. But cubit, 1 hour to the length of your lifespan. Cubit to your height. Cubit to your stature is cubit to your height. This is a nice way to state it for us to understand. Verse 27 talks about adding a single hour to a span of life or adding a cubit to your height. Original language translation of this verse, if we check that out, you would see it here as to add to the, watch how it's stated too, by the way. My internet connection is unstable if you're not hearing me clearly. So let's read the transliteration. Who now from you, being anxious, is able to add to the lifespan of him, our one? Did I miss any words because of Zoom? No, but I know we can't really read that and fully understand it on the spot. We'll have to think about it and get it, but we'll get it. The transliteration talks lifespan. Sorry, adding an hour to our lifespan. Whereas other translations we saw spoke about adding a cubit to your height. The word flow of the Greek there was strange. And there is that confusion. Is it height or is it lifespan? Most commentators that I read spoke about the height reference. Maya, though, was on the life side. He read it. He translated as life, right? The word for cubit or hour or yards, let's check that out. This here. This is pechin, okay? Pechin or pechan. Can I go to this? Yes. Pechin. Check this word out. The root for it is pechus, or pechus, pronounced pechus. It means cubit, hour, yards. Cubit first. In this verse, the reference means the cubit, the length measured from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. It varied, the length reference varied as humans' body varied too. So there will be discrepancies in applying interpretations of measurement given in cubits. Some people might say, oh, that's like 22 inches. No, some will say like, that's 28 inches. Some might say, oh, 20 inches. Different people. Now, despite the lexicon revelation, the interlinear did not say cubit, pechus, meant a length measurement. It went with the age measurement, like an hour to your life. Various translations may be seen to differ, as I showed you just now, between adding life or adding to your life or adding to your height, to your stature. Two of the literal ones mixed it. The literal ones that mixed it, let me show you. Good old Young's literal and the LSV. Who of you being anxious is able to add to his age 1 cubit? Who of you being anxious is able to add to his age 1 cubit? Add to your age a length. They just chose both sides and mix it? No. Nothing in the Bible is by chance, and nothing is confusing in the Bible if we study it deep enough. Barnes directed us to Psalm 39, verse 5. Oh, I did not cue that up. I apologize. Let me bring up Psalm 39, verse 5. Psalm 39. Let's check out Psalm 39, verse 5. Check this out, what he says. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before it. My days are handbreadths. A handbreadth, the length of your hand, or the breadth of your hand. In their culture, it was possible to express the length of time using a length of distance measurement. That's why we see life in Psalm 39, verse 5, being measured compared to a measure of length. That's why the cubit word, cubit for length of distance, was used to contextually mean addition to your lifespan. Similarly, in this same verse, let's go back. Where is it? Right. Helikian. Helikian. This word here means lifespan. You saw it there. Helikian could mean age or stature or life or life's span. Helikian in this was used to mean age and time of life specifically. Because if we do the search, Matthew 6, universally, age, time of life. Now you're seeing Matthew 6:21 here, but this should have been Matthew 6:27. I'm telling you it's a typo. Because check this out, Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Nothing here has lifespan. Nothing here has helekia. Nothing has helekia. If you wanted to see proof, I'll show you the original words. This here is, by the way, Strong's Greek 2244. In Matthew 6:21, there is no 2244. You see, it's a short verse, so you can check it. There's no 2244. So seeing the reference for Matthew 6, this is here for Matthew 6:27. I'm not guessing. It was a typo on this page. I have found typos on the pages before, little things, misspellings and so on, which is, you might say, oh, that's not professional. Look at how many things they type up. One little error that we find, let's not jump on it, okay? So helekia means time and lifespan. The main message here, and I'm closing now, the main message here is that we can't add seconds to our lives by worrying. That makes worrying a useless act. Jesus was emphasizing that worrying, Jesus is emphasizing, because the word is living and breathing. Jesus is emphasizing that worry is not the way to get anything done. In fact, modern medicine has taught us that worry leads to increasing our stress levels. Higher stress levels are associated with lower life expectancy. Higher stress levels negatively affects our body. We might see worry like in, grays and wrinkles and age, but that's natural that age will change our body's appearances. Worry also affects us inside. A person with high stress levels is a hormone called cortisol, which is a stress hormone. They call it stress hormone. But also, stress affects the way organs operate. It lowers our life expectancy. Our lives, keep this in mind, our lives are already determined, including the lengths of our lives, what you'll do, what you'll enjoy, what you'll suffer. It's all laid out already. God knows it. We still have to make decisions in the moments, but the decisions we make will lead to exactly what God knows. Some people say, well, if everything is predestined, what am I working for? I have no free will. In the moment you make a choice, you have free will. All right, this is where some Calvinists might disagree with me, but in the moment you have a choice, you have a free will. But because God knows exactly what you'll choose every time you face a choice, it's predestined. He knows whom he's chosen. That's why you can't out-sin God and his forgiveness. That's why you can't surprise God with how disgusting you can be when you sin. None of us can. Nothing that we can worry about or plan for or scheme to do will change anything that God has predestined already. Don't live a vain existence worrying about these things. That's a summary of what Jesus is trying to say in this whole section. And we're going to do some more next week again. We're stopping here. This has been Bible study number 205 on August 19th, Tuesday, August 19th of 40 Days Ministries Bible Studies series on Matthew. This was the 79th. Next week, God willing, if I'm alive and you're around, we can do number 80 as we continue to study Matthew 6, verses 25 to 34. Don't worry. I thank you all for watching on YouTube and on Facebook. I thank the live audience for being here. Welcome to those who came in afterwards. Welcome to you. Let's close off. Have a good night and goodbye to the Facebook and YouTube people.